Dr. Riaz Khan, and today we will be taking a new topic from history. It is going to be unit number 8, which is titled Mauryan and Post-Mauryan Period, and the time scale is going to be from 322 BC to 320 AD. Within that period, we are going to focus on Chandragupta Maurya, Ashoka, and the Mauryan administration. This unit is part of SYBA program History Paper 3, which is called Ancient India, and it will be taken as a topic in SEM 4 Module 5. Moving ahead, even before we take any topic in history, we should be able to answer these 6 questions. Merely reading history will not make us understand or remember the points of the events. It's always better that before we start our study, we should be having these 6 questions in our mind, and these 6 questions should be answered so that we will have value for your study. So let's start with the first question. Now the topic which we are going to study, when did it happen? Okay, now even before, so the time period that we're talking about, history treats time in a very different way. Okay, since it deals with the past and deals with the past, time dates are calculated in a different way. So if you see, the concept is quite clear. It's something called as timeline. Now one can clearly see that this is a central area, okay, and you're already quite familiar with the two terms AD and BC. Okay, this is how we remember the dates, and similar to a number line, this point, the starting point, is year 0, and from here it keeps on increasing. Okay, so right now we are in the year 2021. Okay, and it's going to continue. Okay, now but this event, there is an event that happened here, as you already know the name, before Christ. So here is where Jesus Christ was born. Okay, so the entire time period is classified into pre-Christ era and post-Christ era. Now, why Jesus Christ is a question you ask. The reason is that this entire history study is done as per the Western philosophy, and though we are studying Indian history, we are still referencing through the Western timeline. So that's why even though the dates we have, we are going to refer it out, and we are going to refer it out as per the Gregorian calendar. Now from the timeline, if you keep on going in the reverse way from that, you will be surprised that it keeps on increasing. Now it's just similar to your timeline. It starts with -1, just imagine, and it is -500, -1000. So from this time, -100, -500, -1000 years. So what it means to say is that this event happened, whatever happened, 500 years before Christ was born. This defines 1000 years. Okay, so when we are going to study, now this is a particular date that has been given 218 BC. It means that it happened 218 years before Jesus Christ was born. So this timeline is going to define when did the event happen. Okay, so if you see, the time period of Indian history that we're going to talk about is of 322 BC to 184 BCE. Now you will be surprised if this is 0, okay, and 322 BC, so this is 500, this is 100, this is 200. So somewhere here is the time period. Now if you want to sit down and calculate, though I have mentioned 2343 years, it's very easy to calculate. We need to know, because right now the current year is 2021, isn't it? Okay, so how the calculation is done, how did I came to know it's 2343 years? Pretty simple. See, what you need to do is, you need to see what is the current year, okay, and you have to just add how many years happened to 322 years it happened before. So we have to add 221 to 322 years, that is 2343 years ago. That's pretty large time, it's 243 years. Yes, and you can also say that the Indian kings, or this event happened 322 years before Jesus Christ. Okay, so even Jesus Christ was not born, so it's pretty old, huh? Don't you think? Now that answers the question when, and the timeline is always a good reference to understand history, and we should know. So now we have a reference, okay, and accordingly we can go ahead with the second question. Since we know when, now we need to know where. Now you need to understand that this is pretty old. 2343 years have passed. So the concept of nation, or the countries that we see today, may not have existed. I mean, physically the places would have been existing, the geographical location would have been there, but they may not have been called as we know by the names in the modern times. So to make it easier, all the events that happened in an area which we lovingly, or even today we know, an area which we call as the Indian subcontinent. Now this is the Indian history actually revolves around the Indian subcontinent. Now if you see, this is a pretty large area, and it is not just India. It is made up of several countries. As you can see, there is a Pakistan here, okay, there is Nepal, there is Bhutan, there is Assam, Arunachal Pradesh, there is West Bengal, this is Sri Lanka, okay, this is the Lakshadweep Island, Andaman Nicobar Islands, Maldives Islands. You see, so it's a pretty vast area. So if you see, the Indian subcontinent is better easier to define other than defining individual countries. So this is how the breakup is being shown: the Lakshadweep, the Maldives, the Andaman and Nicobar, the Bangladesh, Bhutan, and now the Indian subcontinent is made up of these countries. Okay, total 7 in all. It could be more, but then it is generally assumed in this way, so it makes our study quite easy. So with that, we can define that the era, the year 322, and the location is Indian subcontinent. And so what were the names that were given at that time? Because definitely there was no India or Pakistan or Bhutan at that time. So that during that Vedic period, it is called Vedic period, the areas were divided into Janapadas. Okay, Janapadas means, you can say, small sections of areas. Jana means people, and Padas means abode of people who live together. So Mahajanapadas means definitely maybe an area where large amount of people stay together. So at that time, one can see that in the post-Vedic period, there were 15 or 16 Mahajanapadas, or you can say princely states or small kingdoms, and they were quite popular. And among those, as you can see, there is a Kuru Mahajanapada, there is Matsya, this is Suresana, there is Panchala, there is Kosala, this is Kasi, this is Vatsa, this is Seri, this is Avanti, okay, Malla, Vajri, and the Anga. And the major area which we are going to focus is this area, the Magadha. So in that time, Magadha was one of the Mahajanapadas, and its capital, now obviously every state has a capital, so its capital was Patliputra. Now what happened to this capital? Well, you'll be surprised to know that Patliputra still exists, but its name is not Patliputra. Some of you might have guessed it right, it is Patna. So the modern Patna is actually an ancient city called as Patliputra. Okay, so that's how we know the answer to the question where. Now as you can see, during that time, the entire Magadha was having a quite long area where it had focus around, and as you can see the capital Patliputra over there. So starting from a small Janapada, it evolved into a big Mahajanapada, and then later on it captured several other Mahajanapadas. So it seems this is how the entire thing went across, and we're going to study this particular region. Okay, now we know when and where. Now let's talk about who. Now the question is pretty simple: who are we talking about? So it is about the Mauryan Empire, and in total there were 9 kings who ruled within that period. 322 to 180 BC. Okay, now as we've already seen from the topic, there are actually 9 different kings in that Mauryan Empire. Okay, but as per the syllabus, we are not going to take 9 kings. We are going to take only 3 kings. The 3 kings that we are going to focus is the Chandragupta, the Bindusara, and Ashoka. So even their reign and the years in which they ruled and how did they bring the changes about in the Mauryan Empire is there. And along with these 3 kings, we are also going to focus one very, very famous and important personality who had a great influence and contribution, and this person is quite famous and popular in our country, and he is known by none other than Chanakya. So yes, Chanakya, who is also known for Chanakya Niti, or he developed a treatise called as Arthashastra, lived during that period, during the Mauryan Empire. You guessed it right. And we're going to learn more about him. Okay, going ahead. So this answers the question who. These are the 4 people: the Chandragupta, the Bindusara, the Ashoka, and the Chanakya. These are the 4 people whom we are going to understand and study a little bit more. Now, what are we going to study actually? The question is what happened. So the thing is, Mayuran Empire happened. We are going to study how did Mayura Empire came into existence, its rise and its falls, what were the political conditions, how the people were living, how the administration was done, what they did actually. So the history is going to talk about what was about Mayuran Empire. Okay, and as you can see, this is how the entire growth happened. The entire territory of Magda, as you can see, during that time, from a small principality it spread out to a very, very vast area. So as you can see, the Ashoka, the Mauryan Empire was pretty vast. Okay, and at the end of the empire, before the end of the Mauryan Empire, as you can see, it literally captured entire India. So one can clearly say, except the southern region, the South Indian southern region, okay, there's a huge chunk. You can see a majority of Pakistan and a little bit of Afghanistan, the Himalayan ranges, okay, the Nepal, the Bhutan, the Bangladesh. Okay, these are the big areas. Now this is a very vast area, literally a vast area to rule, and it's pretty amazing to see. And this is what is has been understood and recognized as the areas. Now you can still see there is the Patliputra is still the capital in the entire process. There are a few more major cities, that is the Ujjain. As you can see, there is a major city called as Ujjain. Okay, obviously you can also see Amravati. Amravati is in Andhra Pradesh. Okay, you can also find Delhi is there. You see that? Delhi, interesting. Oh, this is an interesting name, Alexandria on the Indus. This will come to back later. Now there is Takshila, Takshila. Interesting names. So as you can see, there were many cities at that time, and obviously the Mauryan Empire extended its entire area. Now, coming to the question, why? I mean, why they like to do this? Why? What happened? Why these things happened? Well, and why are we studying? The question is that, okay, these things happened, and why that we have to find it out. The many reasons, and plus why we are studying this is because to understand our ancient Indian history. That's why we are studying this. And we also need to understand the political, social, economical, and cultural developments of India from the prehistoric times. It is our history, it's our past. Well, we also need to appreciate it and have pride in it, because our youth need to understand how glorious, and this is way before the the Western influences, as you can see, in ancient India. And obviously it will help us to remember our past so we can shape our future. This is always good, because we should not commit the mistakes, or we should not take decisions which will lead to the demise and destruction of civilization. So obviously it's always better to remember our past, and that's why we are studying this. And the last point, how did all this thing happen? Well, it was not happen. It didn't happen in just a day or two or a year, but the conditions were right, and many things happened. And we are going to deeply study that. We know that with the help of Chanakya, Chandragupta, through an existing dynasty which was called as the Nanda dynasty. They were ruling the Magda region. As I told you, Magda is one of the Mahajanapadas, and they were able to do this because, interesting, people were unhappy. Oh my god, you see. So maybe this rings a bell. If the people are unhappy, be careful, you may be thrown. And obviously due to the poor administration of the Nanda rulers. So one can clearly say that the Nanda dynasty, who were the Nanda rulers, were not able to do proper justice with the people, and the administration was poor. So due to these conditions, with the aid of a brilliant strategist called as Chanakya and an ambitious person named Chandragupta, both of them overthrew an existing dynasty. So these all things happened. So that solves all the question. And of course, we are going to talk also about a very important person, that is Ashoka. Now, don't be surprised. It's just for reference. And those who wanted to see a reference in Indian cinema, you can please go and see Ashoka. Ashoka is one of the characters whom we are going to study about. It's good for entertaining purpose, and obviously it talks a lot about, it shows some glimpses about the Kalinga War. Apart from the love story, rest all of the things makes a little bit sense, but don't take the plot literally. So those who want to have a glimpse of it exactly, you can have a look here.